So we're now going to turn our attention to the implementation of the GCD microservice, which is, as you might expect, a little different and actually quite interesting. And it uses a different concurrency mechanism. So this time we're going to show how to implement the GCD controller and the GCD microservice implementation using Java parallel streams. And it'll give us a chance to kind of compare and contrast those two approaches. The GCD controller, again, we won't dwell on this. We've seen this a million times before. It's a REST controller. It's auto-wired to its service, surprise, surprise. And it's got a method called compute GCDs, which takes a list of integers and forwards that down to the service to do the dirty work. We have to have an annotation here to say this is an endpoint handler method for incoming requests that have the compute GCD list path routing name. Again, no surprise. And as before, like we did for the primality controller, we also had to have a request param annotation. So nothing really new or exciting there, so I didn't want to spend much time on that. The GCDService class, however, is a little bit more interesting. So this class, as usual, is a service. Again, no surprise there, because we want Spring to do the dependency injection and auto wiring for us. It takes this list of integers, which are the integers we want to compute GCD for. And the way we're going to do this, it's going to be the same set of integers that we pass to the compute primalities call on the primality microservice. But what we're going to do now is we're going to take each successive pair of integers. So we'll take the first two, then the next two, then the next two, then the next two, and so on. And we're going to go ahead and pairwise combine them in order to be able to check to see what the greatest common divisor is of each pairwise GCD param, as we're going to call it. And in order to do this, we're going to use some pretty neat techniques based on Java streams. And I'll talk a bit more about this when I get to the next part of the lesson where we actually look at the code in great detail. But basically what we're going to do is we're going to take that list of integers and we're going to make a call to something that I wrote called a list splitterator. And a list splitterator is a Java mechanism. It was a mechanism added in Java 8 and has persisted to this day, of course. And it can be used to automatically convert whatever data items you've got into a stream. And the way you do this is you pass an instance of a splitterator to a method called stream on the stream support class. And that will automatically do whatever the splitterator is programmed to do to convert your data type into a stream. And by passing in the true parameter here, we're telling it to create a parallel stream. So we're going to have a parallel stream of what we basically call GCD params, which are these tuples. And then we go ahead and we have those run in parallel through a method that we pass here as a method reference called compute GCD, which takes a GCD param and then computes the GCD, and it returns a GCD result. And what we end up with, of course, is a stream of GCD results, which we then convert into a list of GCD results. And before we look at the code in detail, I just want you to kind of step back and kind of think in your mind, how do you compare and contrast this code with the code we saw for the primality microservice that used the Java structured concurrency? And again, this is Doug's personal opinion that you're more than welcome to disagree with, but you should have good reasons to back up whatever you like. I find this a little bit easier to understand because this is basically just saying, hey, make a stream of these things, and then in parallel, compute the GCD and turn it into a list. Whereas with the structured concurrency approach, if you recall, we had to first scatter everything out using the submit method, and then we got back a list of futures, which we then had to convert into a list of objects. And so I just find that to be a little bit more in direction than I would like. So your mileage may vary. You're welcome to whatever you like, but I think it's instructive, and really one of the key themes of the course is to be able to compare and contrast these different approaches. So that's the end of the overview of the structure and functionality of the GCD microservice.